49ers Ultimate Report. This is John J., your 49ers reporter, opinionist, analyst, and die-hard fan. Welcome to another episode of 49ers Debate Opponents here on my YouTube channel, the 49ers Ultimate Report. I want to give a big thank you to my last guest, Game On Wisconsin, and of course, my other guests from the Lions and Philadelphia for hopping on as we debate this wonderful series the day before the 49ers play their opponents. So thank you for those who have been on this show. Thanks, everybody, for also tuning in a little bit more later than usual, but I'm still having on my show. But before we jump into the episode, I want to give a major shout out to all the great supporters, my channel members, my subscribers, and my diehards who are always in the chat. Thank you for supporting my channel. But without further ado, let's continue on this wonderful series called 49ers Debate Opponents. And today we have the 49ers Seahawks preview. We have a good guest coming on. Those who've been following me, you guys know who he is. Let's say hello to some people in the chat. Luke Luna, of course, I'm a little bit late. Usually I have these shows on a little bit more earlier in the afternoon. I want to say what's up to CG Ruthless Sports. Keep up the grind, man. I love your great content. And of course, this is my guest. So before we bring him in, if you have been following my channel for quite a while, you guys know who this guy is. This guy has been on my channel before. His name is Steezy Smith. He covers all things Seattle Seahawks. So let's now bring in Seattle fan Steezy A. Smith. What's up, man?
Yo, what's going on, John J? Thanks for having me on the show, bro. Always a pleasure being on, but thank you so much.
Yeah, so before we jump right in, of course, I want you to reintroduce yourself to those who've been watching. They saw our first interview during the off season, but I have a lot of new channel members. I have a lot of new subscribers. So introduce yourself one more time. Let them know who you are, what do you do, what you cover on your channel.
Yes, sir. So Calvin Domingo is the name. Steezy A. Smith is the game. I'm currently a college student. I got a couple more years left of college. I'm trying to major in sports journalism / sports broadcasting. I started my YouTube channel about a year ago. I'm based over here in Seattle, but I don't only cover the Seattle Seahawks. I cover the NBA. And this might be kind of surprising, but I'm actually more of an NBA fan than I am an NFL fan. But in recent years, I've kind of come to love football, and I've really come to cover the football, especially the Seattle Seahawks. But you can expect to see not just Seahawks content, like I said, but NBA content. I also talk a little bit of baseball. I had a baseball guy on staff. I'm trying to get back into that, but I'm really an avid fan of all sports. Boxing, I cover a little bit of that as well. I'm looking to get into soccer, a whole bunch of stuff. So don't just expect Seahawks content, a whole lot of other stuff. I collab and work with a lot of other content creators as well from all across the U.S. So that's pretty much what I do. But Steezy Smith is my channel.
Yeah, so I want everyone to be thankful he's been on the 49ers Ultimate Report. This is the second time. So this guy I'm going to be featuring on my channel a lot during my wonderful journey. And, of course, we have another Seattle Seahawks game later in the season. So he'll probably be on, guys. So he will be on this channel many times. So let's jump right into what happened last week. I want to get your thoughts. And, of course, I want to give my final thoughts on last week's games, your team, my team. So let's start off with you. What were your thoughts on the game you played against the Vikings? I just want to get your thoughts. How are you feeling after a week? And just give me your thoughts on the game.
Man, obviously that was the second game that Seattle dropped in a row, and this is very unlike Seattle. Seattle, Russell Wilson never lost 2 games in a row. That ended up happening for the first time last week. And it's really just been a tale of two halves. In the first half of games, Seattle's offense has been not only super explosive, it's been the best in the NFL, not only in terms of points per drive, but in terms of overall points in the first half. If I'm not mistaken, it's either 62 or 68 points that Seattle has scored in the first half, and that leads the NFL. But in the second half, like I just mentioned, it's a tale of two halves. Seattle has a combined 13 points in the second half, and that includes 0 points in the third quarter. That includes averaging 4 points a game after halftime. And in 100 minutes of football, 13 points? Really? That's absolutely putrid. That's atrocious. And to me, I know that the talent is there. Obviously, you guys all know what Russ Wilson's capable of. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson, the skill position players are there. The stars are there. And so to me, it just kind of it's on coaching. I really think it's an indictment on the coaches. You come into the games, guns a blazing, you come out explosive, you come out scoring on 3 or 4 drives, 3 or 5 drives, 4 or 5 drives. And then after halftime, when the other team makes adjustments, Seattle is failing to make adjustments. Not only that, Seattle's dead last in yards allowed a game. Opponents' time of possession leads the league with 37 minutes. Keep in mind there's 60 minutes in a football game. And so whoever Seattle plays, they've been holding on to the ball 37 minutes out of 60. That's just not going to cut it. And obviously, no one likes to lose. But I just think that Minnesota, they had their backs against the wall. That was their first home game of the season. I think they're a sneaky, underrated team. And Seattle's had their number. So they were kind of due for a win. And Seattle's defense, like I said, it's just been really leaky. And, yeah, like I said, this is also very uncharacteristic of the Seahawks. I expect it to end tomorrow in San Fran. And now if it doesn't, then the next game against LA will also be very telling, as that could potentially decide the season for us. And so obviously I'm not happy, but at the same time, I'm also of the mindset that all great teams, all great players have to go through adversity. Seattle has been 1-2 before, and they've still made the playoffs. I know the situation is different now. I know the division is as stacked as ever. I know our defense is terrible, but Russell Wilson is still there. And like I mentioned, all those skilled players, all those stars are still there. Jamal is due for a good game. Bobby Wagner still – he's up there with Fred Warner. They're 1-2 in terms of the best linebackers in football. So I expect these guys to get it together. And if they don't, I don't even want to go there yet.
I remember when the season started, there was a lot of question marks with the Cardinals and the Rams. And I knew that there was also a lot of question marks with your team. And, of course, there was also a lot of question marks for the 49ers. So when you guys went on the road, and I think you guys played the Colts, I forgot who you played week 1, and you guys had a really good game. At the time, the Colts, I had them as a playoff team. And then you guys had a good lead against Tennessee because Tennessee, they got killed against the Cardinals. And I thought, all right, you guys are going to win that game because Tennessee's are, they're looking like frauds. But then that second half, I don't know what happened. And then, you guys lost, I think in overtime or something. And then against the Vikings, I'm like, you guys have the Vikings. The Vikings are going to find ways to lose this season. And for some reason, they didn't have Dalvin Cook. And so there's a lot of question marks on your team as well. Of course, all 49er fans like myself, now it's my turn to talk about my team. I was still pissed off. Like, I had to go on a live reaction after the game, and I was, like, furious, and I was, like, just dropping my disbelief at our quarterback. And it really shows you that, the way the Niners lost that game is a reminder. We have so many question marks, just like your team. So whoever wins this game, Niners or Seahawks, they're going to have a little bit of momentum going into the season. And for the 49ers, in my opinion, if we lose against you guys, there might be a changing of the guard really soon, not just with our quarterbacks, but a lot of big question marks, not just revolving with the quarterback position, but there's be a lot of questions that have to be answered, not just with the front office, but with ownership. What direction is this 49ers team going? So hopefully that was a wake-up call for us. So we'll see what happens with the 49ers versus the Seahawks. So those are my thoughts. Do you have any last words about last week?
Yeah, honestly, I just I think that going back to my point earlier about adversity, usually the great teams, they take that adversity and they use it to evolve, or they use it to get over the hump. And so while, yes, I do believe that, Seattle's in trouble, I'm also of the mindset that, they've been through worse. And so I really just hope that they've, kind of been soul searching. I hope that they've been, thinking about what the future could possibly be if they end up continuing this losing streak. And so if anything, I'm actually kind of glad that Seattle is going through this losing streak now. They're going through these growing pains now, just because if they end up getting right, then come towards the end of the season, come playoff time, they would have battled, their demons. They would have battled, some of those early season struggles, and they'd be, I feel like, in good shape heading into the playoffs, if that's even going to be an option. So I'm just glad that, Seattle's going through this adversity now. So come later, they'll be battle tested.
I want to say a quick shout out to my boy, our young kid, our future of the 49ers podcast and YouTube. I'm in the dream. Thanks for hopping on. He gives you what's up too.
Yes, sir. What's up, bro?
CG has some news. Looks like Hurst will be playing against the Seahawks, so that'll be really good depth. And we need all the depth in the middle. Danny is asking, is Drake Kirkpatrick playing? And then CG says he's probably likely, yeah. So hopefully, those players do play for the 49ers. But thank you for those. I'll give you guys always a quick shout out. All right, so let's talk about this. You mentioned it, right there. There's a lot of information there. Hopefully you can also read it, but I'm just going to summarize it. 26th rank pass defense, 30th rank run defense. Last week, you guys allowed Kirk Cousins 323 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. And on the rush defense, you guys allowed a total of 140 yards. That was without Dalvin Cook, 4.3 yards per carry. What's going on with your defense? Why is it playing this bad? Don't you guys have some really good talent on that defense?
Well, heading into the season, the secondary was everybody's concern. And that's so far come to fruition. The secondary has been awful. Trey Flowers has been, I don't even know if awful is the right word. Is there a word worse than awful? Because if there is, then I'm sorry, no disrespect to the player at all, but that's just what he's been this season. And I understand he was kind of voicing his frustration post-game last week. Him and DJ Reed were talking about there's a little bit of miscommunication. There's some problems with the scheme. Sometimes guys don't know what they're doing. Guys don't know where they're supposed to be at. Guys are thinking that we're going to have underneath help. We're going to have help over the top. And so guys just aren't on the same page. And so I think part of it is personnel, definitely personnel, just because Seattle could stand to improve at cornerback. But I think a lot of it also is just a lack of communication. Guys aren't on the same page. Pete Carroll and Kate Norton Jr., I don't think that they're tailoring their scheme or their play calling on defense to really fit or cater to this personnel. Jamal excelled last year when going after the quarterback. Obviously, we all know what type of records he set, 9.5 sacks, the most for a DB, and he only played 12 games. And this year, I'm just not really seeing the same thing. He's dropping back a lot in coverage, and I don't mind seeing him in coverage because I don't think he's as terrible as everybody is saying he is, but we're not even using him to get after the quarterback anymore. Our pass rush has been non-existent, and prior to the season, I was kind of of the notion that, okay, Seattle's pass rush is going to be able to mask, the deficiencies in the secondary, just because when you have a great pass rush, that helps out the back end tremendously. Did we forget Seattle was 7th in the NFL last year with 46 sacks? And so I was kind of thinking that, okay, there's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of guys that they can rotate in and out. Jamal's still there. Bobby's there. Jordan Brooks, he can step in for KJ Wright. But, man, on top of injuries, on top of lack of communication, on top of not being on the same page, on top of, not using certain players in the right way, I think that's all contributing to the defense just not performing up to standard. And even the offense deserves some blame too, because they haven't been able to capitalize on third down. Before the season, I dropped a video talking about why third down is going to be crucial for Seattle entering the season. And yet Seattle is still, I think their conversion percentage on third down for the season is below 40. They're only converting 37% of their third downs. And that's just not going to cut it. And so if you can't extend drives, you're putting your defense out there to suffer. They're going to be on the field a lot more than you want them to. They're going to get tired of fatigue. And so there's so much that goes into it. But those are just a few of the things that I feel like is really contributing to this disastrous start for the Seattle defense.
I want to give a quick shout out to my boy Corey Davis. He says, Steezy A. Smith, I got a request from you. Joining my 49er group is under the name Calvin. Is that you? So I think he's asking you a question.
Yeah, bro. If it says Calvin Domingo, that's me.
Okay.
That's me.
There you go. Yeah, you got to hang. This guy, Corey Davis, is a good dude. I like him. OG 49er fan. Thanks very much, Corey, for hopping on. All right. Like for me, how I see this is that for the past several years, once you guys lost those guys, the Legion of Boom, yeah, your defense hasn't been the same like they used to be. I remember Seattle's defense was so scary. Like every coordinator was like, how do we, because you guys had Richard Sherman in his prime. You guys had Cam Chancellor. And see who else. You guys had a lot. You guys had a lot of players that I can't even remember. And then those guys, I don't know if they retired or they got traded. I remember when you had Marshawn Lynch, it was a really good balanced defense about everything. So Seahawks were very dangerous, in the early 2010s. But after that, defense, and of course everything, uh, the Seahawks haven't been the same no more. Like I don't know what's going on. Well, what's going to be the future in the next 5 years? But that is concerning if you're a Seahawks fan. Like 26th ranked passing, 30th ranked run defense. That is not something that's at the bottom. That's at the bottom. That's like, and if the 49ers run game is gets better against that run defense, I don't think it's going to be even fair in my opinion. So, uh, do you agree with my analysis on that?
Man, yeah, definitely, bro. I feel like that's why I think it's up to Pete Carroll and some of the staff members to really hone in on maybe changing up the scheme a little bit because Seattle, they've been running the same defense. It's cover three zone, cover two zone. And you were able to get away with it back then because you had elite talent, you had elite personnel. Now, you don't have Richard Sherman. You don't have Cam Chancellor. You don't have Earl Thomas. You don't have a KJ Wright. You don't have a defensive line that's super stacked. Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett, Red Bryant. You don't have all these guys. And so I just don't understand why Pete Carroll continues on insisting running the same scheme with a less talented group of players. And Seattle is also not helping things. The offense isn't helping matters by not running the football. Pete Carroll is always talking about we need balance. We want to run. We want to run. Against Minnesota, Chris Carson had 12 carries. Even though he averaged 6.7 yards a carry, we stopped running the ball in the second half. And against Tennessee, second half, including overtime, Chris Carson had 4 carries. 4 carries. Now, how do you expect to help your defense when you're not running the football? That's why all these teams in the time of possession is so high. It's massive. And to me, time of possession is a little overrated. That's why I don't pay too much attention to it. But when you're in the position that Seattle is in, with the defense that's ailing, with an offense that can't convert on third down, it just looks that much worse. So, yes, I completely agree with you, bro. The scheme is starting to get old. It's not tailor-made for the personnel that's available. And the lack of adjustments, all that is an indictment on the coaches. Yes, execution still plays a part because at the end of the day, it's not coaches that are playing football on the field, but coaching is vital. Coaching is critical in the National Football League. And if you're not putting your guys in the right positions to succeed, if the guys on the field don't know what they're doing, if they don't know which of the teammates is doing what, that's all on the coaches. So I'm 100% with you, bro. I think ever since the Legion of Boom was dismantled, Pete Carroll hasn't really adjusted in the way that I think he should have.
Yeah. And Corey Davis, I can answer this question for you. Yeah, he is a Seattle. He covers Seattle. So thanks, Corey Davis, for your questions. Yeah, if your run defense has a problem and say Trey Sermon, has a really good game, that's going to open up the play action for Jimmy Garoppolo where he really exceeds what he's able to roll out and be able to get time allowing his receivers. And so that's going to be a huge Achilles heel for you guys. So like I said, right now, your team is dealing with a lot of problems, just like the 49ers, dealing with a lot of problems. So hopefully we'll see what happens. Because remember, everything changes like, each week, everything changes. Like just because, both of our teams, had tough games does not mean that, some team is going to play better than the other. So I never count out Seattle because our next thing that we're going to talk about is this. I know, I think everybody knows it. 9th ranked pass defense, 13th ranked actually it's supposed to be offense. Basically run offense. Russell Wilson, even though he did not have the big game, he was 2 yards short from 300 yards, 9.3 pass attempts, 111.2 passer ratings. DJ Metcalf, 100 plus yards, a touchdown. Chris Carson averaging 6.7 carries. If everything goes well for your offense, you guys should be scoring points. So do you agree that while your defense is struggling, your offense is going to try to keep you in the games?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to take a page out of the Kansas City, playbook, just because we all know what type of defense they have over there. And we all know what type of offense they have, led by Patrick Mahomes. I think Seattle's going to have to hone in. It's going to have to focus on the offense. I just feel like in the offseason, Seattle didn't really pick a side. They didn't want to focus on one side of the ball. They just said, you know what, we'll add a little bit of anything, a little bit of everything to both sides, and we'll just see what happens. Clearly, the offense is his team's strength. When you have a top 3, top 5 quarterback, and you have, 2 top 20 wide receivers and DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, you have a top 10 running back in Chris Carson. Clearly, the strength of this team is going to be the offense. And so, yes, I think that this team should be headlined by the offense. This team should use its offense to carry the rest of the team. And this team should put all of its resources into the offense. And the biggest difference between Kansas City's defense and Seattle's defense is the fact that Kansas City's defense is opportunistic. Kansas City's defense can get turnover happy. Kansas City's defense, they're able to capitalize and pick off passes or force turnovers and give the ball back to their opposing offense. Seattle's defense so far this season still is without a single interception. The Jaguars, the Falcons, the Jets, those are some of the same teams that Seattle is in the same company with as far as not having a single interception on the season. And so that's just not going to cut it. So, yes, Seattle has to focus on the offense. Seattle has to let the offense run the show, dictate action, and really start winning football games. I don't see why Pete Carroll isn't really giving full control, of this offense to Shane Waldron. To me, it seems like he still wants full autonomy over both sides. Maybe he ceded some control to Shane Waldron, but to me, it just looks like in the second half of games, Pete Carroll starts butting his head in, and he's kind of taking over some of the play calls, or he's not letting Shane Waldron really do his thing. So to me, that's why I keep talking about how changes had to be made. Guys have to look at themselves in the mirror and do some soul searching.
Yeah, as long as you guys have Russell Wilson, you guys have a good receiving core. I don't know who your tight end is because, like I said, I don't cover your team. But that tight end must be pretty good. When your offensive line is allowing your run game, that offense is going to move down and score points. We know if everything goes really, really well. Now, the thing that the 49ers, of course, we have Nick Bosa. We got this guy, Samson Ebukam, who we got him because of the situation dealing with these running quarterbacks. And one thing about if our edge rushers, if D Ford is also playing, he's not going to be playing the whole game, but it's going to be how our defensive line will basically put pressure on your quarterback, which will make it more easier for our secondary, which is a big weakness. But when I look at this stat and this information, I have to be completely honest. Like, for sure, I know you guys should be putting points on the board, and the Packers they're a reminder. They have good receivers, Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers. Basically, Russell Wilson is sort of like an Aaron Rodgers with his, passing, attack. They also have like their version of Aaron Jones with Chris Carson. So I am not taking your offense really lightly. So, that's all I can say about that. I don't know. Any final thoughts on your offense?
Yeah, no, I just think that, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if Seattle's offense is able to get right in the second half of games, if Seattle is able to prevent their defense from being on the field so much by just pounding the rock a little bit more, if they're able to get some more of that time of possession on their side, I really and truly feel that Seattle's offense could be top 3 in the league, if not the best in all of football. It's just really all about letting this team run through the offense, letting this team or giving this team more running, or we need to run the ball more just so we can take some pressure off of the defense. So if they could do that, if they could play complete football in both halves, teams better watch out because Seattle's going to be in for a bounce back. But that's a big if.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so at the end of the day, for sure, right now your defense, they're in Achilles heel, but as long as you guys have, these offensive weapons, you guys are going to be able to score a lot of points. So there's going to be a lot of shootouts, in my opinion, during this season where you guys are going to be forced to try to get 30 points at least to make the game because for sure you're playing the Rams twice, you're playing the Cardinals twice, and those teams are much better than both of us thought. I think you guys are playing, the same division that we're playing. So I think you might also play the Packers. So there's going to be some tough games where you guys are going to be forced to score a lot of points. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next topic is basically 3 key matchups. And basically, of course, your left tackle versus our, Nick Bosa. And then, as I talked about, your run defense versus Trey Sermon. And, of course, your wide receivers versus the secondary. before we talk about these key matchups, are there any other key matchup that you want to talk about that's not on this list?
I'm liking what I'm seeing. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks wide receivers versus the secondary. No, I think you're right on the money.
All right. So let's start off with, of course, Nick Bosa. He's coming off an ACL injury. He's having a good 3-game span because most players with ACL injuries, they take a while to get back to form. But Nick Bosa has been really, really doing a great job. Of course, the Lions, that was his first game. So he had a little bit of some issues, but he was still able to sack Jared Goff. He got a lot of quarterback pressures, a lot of quarterback hits. Then we played against the Eagles. Their left tackle is a former rugby player, 6'8", 300 and something pounds. And Nick Bosa got through him twice and got 2 sacks on Jalen Hurts. And then, of course, he didn't have the best game, but he had, the first drive, during the game, he had his moments. But, talk about your left tackle. Do you think Nick Bosa is going to be a tough matchup for your left tackle?
Man, of course, bro. Nick Bosa is a tough matchup for even the best left tackle in all of football. I mean, I think that honor might belong to your guys' very own Trent Williams, or it could be Green Bay's David Bakhtiari, who's currently on the PUP list. But Dwayne Brown is up there. He's a top 5, top 10 left tackle, even at his advanced age. He's going to struggle. Yeah, okay, he's not going to struggle to the tune of allowing, a whole bunch of sacks, but everybody struggles with Nick Bosa. And as the weeks go on, Nick Bosa is only going to get healthier. Nick Bosa is only going to become more comfortable. Nick Bosa is only going to be better as a football player, period. And so, I think that Dwayne Brown is definitely going to hold his own, but there are going to be a few one-on-ones in which, Nick Bosa wins. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all. Nick Bosa is that great of a player. I mean, his rookie year, not only was he a shoo-in to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, he was also a candidate to win Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie. So we all know what kind of havoc, what kind of disruption he's usually forcing upon opposing offenses. And so he's definitely a guy that I'm, of course, scared to go up against. But you want to go up against the greats. You want to be able to test out just how good you are. Dwayne Brown, he's an elite tackle in this league. So I'm looking forward to the matchup.
Yeah, of course, I already said this against all the other teams that we played. Nick Bosa is somehow continues to prove everybody wrong, and he proves me wrong every single day. That's the reason why, even though he had that injury in college, there's a reason why the Bosa brothers are built the way that they are. Someone told me a joke that there's a thing called a Wolverine that made of metal. Maybe Nick Bosa has those Wolverine metal bones, except but I don't really understand that stuff. But that kind of makes a lot of true. So hopefully your left tackle finds a way to slow them down, because if one thing about Nick Bosa, he knows how to line up diagonally, and he will give anybody a tough time. And if he needs to double team, the news that just came out that Marcel Hurts, is going to bring some good depth over there. Of course, Javon Kinlaw is a good run stopper, so it's going to be a really good matchup. How Nick Bosa will translate the great success on that defensive line. So now let's move on to Trey Sermon, who did not have a great game against your run defense, and your run defense is having a tough, some tough problems right now at this moment. Dalvin Cook didn't play, but I don't know who was the running back that started, but he had 114 yards. Man, I don't know what happened. I thought it was Dalvin Cook that did that, but the backup. So when you look at this matchup, what are your thoughts about this matchup? Trey Sermon, who's probably the running back number 1 against your struggling defensive run game at this time earlier in the year.
So I'm not super worried, just because there have been flashes of Seattle being dominant against the run, and we saw that in Week 1 against the Indianapolis Colts. Quentin Nelson was there, Jonathan Taylor was there, and Jonathan Taylor ended up having more receiving yards than rushing yards. He averaged, I think, or the team as a whole averaged under 4 yards a carry. And we all know what Pete Carroll loves to emphasize on defense, right? Prevent the deep plays and stop the run. And when it comes to stopping the run, it's all about, okay, yeah, you have to diagnose whether the play is a run or a pass. And a lot of the guys on this team, especially led by Bobby Wagner, I think they excel at that. I think it also comes down to being disciplined. It comes down to desire. And Seattle, they have a whole bunch of dogs. These guys are dogs on the roster. These guys are go-getters. And so these guys are also hard hitters. And so Week 1, right, Seattle shut down the run game. Week 2, in the first half against Derrick Henry, they shut that down. And then in the second half, obviously, we all know what happened. Derrick Henry had 147 yards rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns. But that's Derrick Henry. That's the best running back in football. He'll do that to any defense, no matter how good. So I'm not going to look at that and be like, oh my gosh, our run defense is horrific. Derrick Henry is running all over anybody. And then for Alexander Mattison, the Minnesota Vikings backup running back, I'm not super worried about that either. Last year against Seattle, he stepped in for Dalvin Cook, and he also had over 100 yards rushing. So maybe he knows a thing or two about Seattle's run defense that they're not aware of. And so Alexander Madison also actually happens to be one of the better backup running backs in all the National Football League. And he also killed Seattle through the screen game. With Trey Sermon, I'm not as worried about him. And that's not a knock on his talent, but I just think that Trey Sermon, he doesn't have that explosiveness, that burst that will help make the San Francisco 49ers offense a little bit more optimal. When we've seen your guys' run offense work at its best or operate at its best, it's with the lead back that can hit the holes hard and who has that burning speed. Raheem Mostert is one of the fastest, if not the fastest, running back in the National Football League. Elijah Mitchell, we saw how fast he was on display against the Lions when he scampered for a 68-yard touchdown. Trey Sermon, he's good. I'm not saying he's a scrub, but he's not that type of back. And so to go up against the Packers run defense last week, who they don't even have a good defense, he only averaged 3.1 yards a carry. And I understand San Fran, they didn't really run the football that much, but to me, 3.1 yards a carry against a mediocre, if not below average defense in the Green Bay Packers, I'm not scared of that, honestly. And when I look at, some of the guys that are on this defense, Pete Carroll also talking about how changes are going to be made, changes are going to come. And okay, yeah, that's just coach speak, right? But I like to, give Pete Carroll the benefit of the doubt. And then when he says that things are going to change, I believe that things are going to change. And so I think that we'll see a different game plan as far as stopping the run goes. Elijah Mitchell still has a chance to play. And for the benefit of my fantasy teams, I would love to see Elijah Mitchell play, but he practiced in a non-contact jersey all week. And so, it was more of a shoulder stinger, the injury that he suffered. So I'm not exactly sure if he's going to play. I think that if Elijah Mitchell plays, I'll be a little bit more worried. But if Trey Sermon is the lead back, I'm not super concerned.
Yeah, one thing that I said during the draft process, that Trey Sermon was a really good running back, but he wasn't a guy you would draft that early. And the 49ers decided to draft him because, Raheem Mostert, who was our number one guy, it's not a bell cow. So they were looking at him as someone who could take punishment, run through the tackles. They were looking for a running back that can go through the tackles. And, Trey Sermon fit that mold very well. And last week, I don't know what happened because the Green Bay Packers, the defense, there was a lot of questions coming into, and even Packers fans and Packers podcasters and YouTubes were telling me they don't have faith in that defensive line. Right now, your defense, your run game, your pass game is near the bottom. And, for me, I would say, all right, I take these stats, this analytics, this information, but after last week, it's any given Sunday. You never know. Maybe
of course
the Seahawks could have the number one defense that Sunday, and then the following, week, your team could be at the bottom again. So you never know what can happen. And when it comes to Trey Sermon, the reason why I have him there is because Elijah Mitchell, I don't know if they're going to activate him. And even if he is activated, I still am a little bit worried because he did suffer, a shoulder injury. I don't know how his progress is because I'm not at camp. But if your defense, has problems with Trey Sermon, I think it's going to be a bad game, in my opinion. Because if Trey Sermon, basically, as I said, if we average 5 yards every run, at least 5 yards, it'll be 2nd and 5, which will allow play action, which is going to be really, really dangerous for you guys, especially your pass defense is also dealing. And we have some really good receivers right now. George Kittle, there's a question mark. I don't know if he's going to play or not. But if all our weapons are there, it's going to determine why I put this matchup up there, because it's really going to determine, who's going to have the edge when it comes to the run game. All right, now we're going to go to probably, oh, man, I can't believe this is the 4th time, but the secondary versus your wide receivers. I'll tell you my opinions. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, I've been on the record saying this in my Seahawks and 49ers preview that I dropped yesterday. I think Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Russell Wilson, they're in for a field day. I mean, the injuries that you guys have in your secondary is just astonishing. Jason Verrett, obviously, he's been out since week 1, I believe, with the torn ACL. I thought he was going to be in for a Pro Bowl type year. Like we talked about earlier, Josh Norman, bruised lungs. He's doubtful to play. I don't see him taking the field at all. And I think you guys are starting a rookie at corner. I forgot what his name was, but man, DK Metcalf feasted last time. These two teams played. I think he had 12 catches for 164 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did have a great game, a good game against the Vikings last week, but overall, relative to expectations, he's been somewhat quiet. And Tyler Lockett, he's dealing with a minor, knee injury, and so I think DK Metcalf is due for his best game of the season yet. I mean, who's going to cover him? Tyler Lockett. We all know what he's done to opposing defenses. He's been torching everybody and anybody. Him and Russell Wilson, when it comes to that deep ball, that's arguably the best connection, with the exception of Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill when it comes to the deep passing game. But Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson are a very close second. And, I mean, who's going to cover Tyler Lockett on those deep crossing routes, on those fly routes, on those go routes? And so I think that, Seattle's offense, they could potentially pour on the points if they really focus. I know I talked about I need Seattle. I want Seattle to run the football more, but if they're going to ease up on that, definitely put the ball in Russell Wilson's hands and let him expose that pass defense of your guys, because you guys are dealing with a lot of injuries. The pass rush of your guys is still a problem, but you guys are middle of the pack right now. I think if I counted correctly, you guys are about 16th or 17th in the league in terms of total sacks. And so it's not elite like it has been in recent years, but I don't know. Maybe they'll come as Nick Bosa continues to get healthy. I'm just worried for your guys' secondary. I think Russell Wilson, he's highly motivated, never lost 3 in a row. He's going to come out guns a-blazing. He's going to hope to continue that, not just in the first half, but into the second half as well.
Man, for me, when I look up this matchup, and I keep saying this, if our 5th-round rookie, Amador Lenore, that's the kid, if he's the number 1 guy, I don't know who he's going to be covering, because I don't know who your number 1 receiver is, because Metcalf and Lockett, they look like number 1, but one of them is the number 1. So whoever he has to cover, it's going to be a very tough matchup for him. And then Emmanuel Mosley, was supposed to be our number 2 guy, but now, he was supposed to be number 1 after Jason Verrett, but because of that, Amador Lenore has become number 1. And Amador Lenore, for a 5th rounder, has been playing really, really good for a 5th rounder. So he's just very young, and he's being tested early. So hopefully we'll see what he'll do on this game. And of course, Emmanuel Mosley, he does have issues on certain types of coverages. I talked about it before free agency, that he has some issues, but he's a really good corner. So we'll see how that goes. David says that we will hopefully have Kirkpatrick to be on Metcalf. So I don't know if you've seen Kirkpatrick or know who he is, but what are your thoughts on Kirkpatrick? Is he still that top corner he used to be? And are you worried about his presence, if he's going to be out there as well?
So I don't think Kirkpatrick is what he used to be. He used to be on the Bengals, and it's not like the Bengals have a good defense. And so for the Bengals to kind of just let him go, I think that's very telling. I'm not saying he's a scrub. I'm not saying he can't cover it, but going up against a top-tier wideout like DK Metcalf, a physical and athletic specimen such as DK Metcalf, no. I mean, he might win his fair share of matchups just because from time to time, DK, he'll let opponents get into his head and he'll start focusing on other things. He'll be distracted. But, I mean, he's just so physically and physically imposing, and he's so dominating athletically. I just don't see Dre Kirkpatrick winning the majority of his matchups. He'll win a couple, like I said, I'll give him a few. Like I said, he's not a scrub, but him against DK Metcalf, like I said, I think those guys are in for a field day.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. But right now, your offense and your pass game, that's going to be the big matchup, in my opinion. Luke Luna, me and him, we have a lot of different types of opinions. He says no, Lenore is not our number 1. E-Man is our number 1 if Norman is out. But yeah, like I said, Lenore's pretty good, for a rookie. Emmanuel Mosley, he may not be the top corner in the league, but like I said, both those guys are going to be on there, so it doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, those are the corners that you guys are going to be going against with your receivers. So yeah, all right. All right, now comes this part. I left it in its own category by itself. This guy, Samson Ebukam versus Russell Wilson. And during the his first press conference he had in OTAs, he talked about how you go after a running quarterback. And this is what Ebukam said. When it comes to going after a running quarterback, your job is to make sure when the quarterback is running, you don't chase him down. You basically chase him at the line of scrimmage to see what he's going to do. And if the running quarterback comes at you, you stay, planted. So when the running quarterback comes at you, then you can chase him down. So I wanted to talk about this because I wanted to get your thoughts of what Ebukam said. Do you think Ebukam made a very good point on how to stop running quarterbacks, or do you disagree with that comment?
I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, he's the one who's on the field. They're the ones who's diagnosing, how to stop this or how to stop that. So I'm not anybody to say that, oh, you're wrong. That's not the way to stop a mobile quarterback because he knows best, right? He's the one on the field making plays. I always thought that he was an underrated pass rusher. He's more than just a depth piece. And I always felt like, given more snaps, he could really produce it a little bit more. And so for a guy to really come out like that and talk about, his strategy or why he feels like, or what he feels like is the best way to stop a mobile quarterback, I mean, more power to him, But at the end of the day, it really just comes down to you could have a game plan, right? You could have a strategy. You could know how to stop a mobile quarterback. But when it really comes down to it, when the ball is snapped, it's one thing to strategize, but it's another to actually go after Russell Wilson. And I know he's not as fast as he once was, but he's still one of the better pure, mobile and athletic quarterbacks that the National Football League has to offer. You could say, okay, I'm going to do this to stop Russ. But then when the ball is snapped and we're in live action, it's a little bit harder, or it's a lot easier said than done. Just because Russell Wilson is so crafty, he's a magician out there in the pocket. I mean, I don't have to remind you, bro. You know what sort of stuff he does in and out of the pocket, how he's able to dodge and manipulate defenders, how he's able to get away, how he's able to scramble. He has such a unique ability to just get away and evade the rush, no matter where it's coming from, no matter what sort of strategies the opposing defenders are doing or what type of scheme that they're, planning up against them. He just knows what he's doing. He's seen it all. And so you could say that, and I'd say it works, but not a lot of quarterbacks like Russell Wilson. Like, he's literally a magician. So, I mean, best of luck to him. I'm not rooting for you guys to win, but I'm always rooting for players to succeed. I'm pro player, each and every single time. So I'm always hoping for the best, from certain players, even if it's not necessarily on my team, just as long as my team ends up the victor.
Yeah, and the reason why he said that comment is because he was asked, like, when they played against Patrick Mahomes and that great shootout against the Rams a few years ago, and Ebukam had a really good game. He intercepted Patrick Mahomes and then ran for a touchdown. He was able to sack him and all he was talking about. So he was using that example of what he did, and because he's gonna be playing Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray twice. I'm not saying Matthew Stafford is a running quarterback, but he's able to bootleg and move around. So that's why Ebukam was brought over here for those situations, and I give him props. What he did against Patrick Mahomes, who many people can probably say he's probably the number one quarterback in the NFL right now, and he'll probably take over that spot once Tom Brady is retired. But that's a different argument. But as I mentioned, Russell Wilson, if Ebukam has the right answer, it may not be a fair game if his analysis and his opinions is correct about that. So I just wanted to talk about that. All right, now we go to keys of the victories. Tell me some keys for the Seahawks to win, and then I'll tell you some keys that my Niners. So what are some really important keys that the Seahawks have to do to win the football game?
I feel like we're really going to have to run the football. Like I said, I know I talked about how Seattle should look to expose your guys' secondary, but start off the game by running the football. Start off the game by chewing up some clock, start up by establishing the run, and then towards the second half, then you play off of the run. Then you use the play action game, the rollout game. Then you can start throwing deep shots to DK and Tyler Lockett when the defense least expects it. I mean, if you're going to make the jobs of our wide receivers easier, then do that by running the football and do that to help out the defense, so they're not on the field so much and in turn, it'll give Chris Carson more confidence as well going into the season, just because he's not getting all these carries. He's probably thinking to himself like, damn, Seattle re-signed me, but I'm still not getting the touches that I deserve. And so my first key, definitely turn to Chris Carson. Not only is it going to alleviate pressure off the defense, it also helped the offense. It helped the play action game. And towards the end of the game, if the game is close, you can take some of those deep shots. So play off of the run game. It would be my first key. Another key that I have, I want to see us really start to throw some more heat towards opposing quarterbacks. I mean, Kirk Cousins, we only had 1 sack, 4 quarterback hits. That's just not going to cut it. If Jimmy G is sitting there in the pocket with all day to throw, that's not going to bode well for Seattle's chances of winning this football game. So I want to really throw some extra pressure. I know Seattle really hasn't been blitzing that much this year, but I want to throw some pressure his way. George Kittle, he might not play, but he also might play. And if he does play, he might not be 100%. And so that he might be down a weapon there. So I want to see us send some more pressure, send some more heat after Jimmy G, just because when it comes to throwing against the blitz, I don't think he's all that special, and I don't think he's all that great when it comes to throwing against the blitz, or at least being able to deal with pressure. And Seattle has been inconsistent, with getting after the quarterback, but they have the pieces, they have the depth guys, they have the names, they have a rotation that they can count on. So I want to see some more consistency from the pass rush, really, and help them out too by sending out some more blitzes. And then the third key that I got, man, the offense has to stay on fire. So the offense that we're seeing in the first half, it has to be there in the second half. So make some damn adjustments. And Pete Carroll, let Shane Waldron just have full command of the offense, not only in the first half, but also in the second half. Just because earlier, like I mentioned, I feel like Pete Carroll likes to meddle, especially, in the second half. He wants to kind of gain back some control of the offense. He wants to throw his input in. He wants to do what he wants to do. So in the second half, let's come out with the same type of intensity that we come out with in the first half. And if we're able to carry what we do in the first half into the second half, as far as offense goes, it should be a dub.
Yeah, so those are some things that hopefully we can find a way to counter them to make sure you guys don't get the victory. But I've been saying it for 3 weeks. 3 keys to victory. Number 1, Nick Bosa against the left tackles, and can he cause double teams, which will allow the interior of our interior defensive line to get open, to stop the run, on contact, to able to get through, to force Russell Wilson to scramble around, force him to, throw the ball crazy. That interior, interior offensive line will benefit if Nick Bosa does those things. Get the double teams and try to force, a lot of pressures on Russell Wilson. The number 2 thing that I've been saying for the past 3 weeks, and I'm going to say now for the 4th week, is Fred Warner. Fred Warner, unfortunately, did not have the best game. He did cost a penalty. Fred Warner has been outstanding, always, good player, never causing so many problems on the penalty side of the football, but he was getting burned a lot. But if Fred Warner has a good game, the big name that a lot of people, because Trey Greenlaw, he's out for, several more weeks now with surgery, is going to be a guy called Azeez Al-Shaair. He can also play corner or safety, in the pass game. He's really good for a linebacker. He's quick in and quick out. He can go sideline to sideline. He could also be a guy to help out the defensive line in the run game if the interior offensive line. So not a lot of first downs were going to happen. So if Fred Warner is having a really good game, Azeez Al-Shaair will have an outstanding game, helping out with the pass game a lot. So that will be really helpful for our secondary. And of course, I cannot believe I'm going to say this, but if our run game, so if Elijah Mitchell is healthy and he plays, and Trey Sermon is also good, or he's playing, if we get 5 yards per carry, it's going to allow the offense and Jimmy Garoppolo to play action and get a lot of plays downfield. Those are the things that I've been saying for months, but I cannot believe that I am saying that our 3rd round rookie who did not have a good game is going to be an X factor on this game, determined on how our offense will produce. So those are some keys that the 49ers hopefully will do and continue doing to get that 3rd victory of the year. So those are my keys to the game. Any more keys in the game, or did you already got all of them?
Yeah, that was pretty much it, bro. I mean, I think when it comes, down to talent, it's pretty even, right now. But I think as far as star power goes, Seattle has a little bit more star power. I know that doesn't mean as much in football as it does in basketball, but like I said, their backs are against the wall. Seattle's the more desperate team. I think Seattle's going to come out and kind of give it everything they got. Seattle's going to kind of change up a few of their looks, and they're gonna come out swinging. And I know you guys are also reeling. You guys are coming off a heartbreaking last second loss to the Green Bay Packers. You guys are going to be playing at home in front of your fans, but I just feel like a lot of the times, the more desperate team usually ends up coming on top, especially when the gap in talent isn't all that big. And I might even go as far as to say that Seattle, just as far as depth or as far as name brand guys on paper, Seattle has a better roster. And so Seattle, by that account, hopefully comes out on top, also including the fact that they're more desperate and the fact that if they end up losing this game, playoffs could be a no-no. So
Mm-hmm. So Luke Luna, I want to read this. He says that Warner will outplay Bobby Wagner. Do you agree with Luke Luna or do you disagree?
It's hard to say. I think coming into the season, I actually said that Fred Warner has overtaken Bobby Wagner as a better linebacker. But this season, I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. I think Fred Warner's kind of struggled a little bit, like you said, against Green Bay. He gave up that on that last drive of the game. I know, he's great in coverage, but he allowed that deep pass over the middle, just over his outstretched arm to Devontae Adams. And I was just like, that gotta hurt. Because when it comes to, linebackers that can cover, he's arguably the best. Mm-hmm. And so, for him to get beat like that, that's not the only time he's gotten beat. He's gotten beat a few other times, and he just hasn't looked as dominant as he looked last year. And so I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I think him and Bobby are still 1-2. It doesn't really matter who you put, one or two, but those guys are the top two linebackers in football. It doesn't really matter who has the better game. They're both at the top of their games, and they're both so close as far as the skill set goes. To me, it doesn't matter. I just hope that Seattle gets the dub.
And see, for Mr. Fred Warner Sr., Fred Warner's father, I disagree with this guy. Your son's the best linebacker. Shout out to Mr. Fred Warner Sr. If he's watching. He follows me. Shout out to that man. All right. Now comes the final segment of the show, predictions and final score. Unfortunately, we have to do this. And last week, the Green Bay Packer, guy got me in a little bit of surprise. And, he messed me up because all the other, teams, it's only been three weeks of this wonderful show now, 4 weeks of the wonderful show that I've been doing. And I'm very grateful you hopped on a very busy Saturday, just like myself. But now the show has to come to an end, and you have to finish it with predictions and final score. We have to do it. So let's start off with you. Who's going to win, and what's your final score?
All right, look, so I'm not just saying this because I'm a Seahawks guy. Call me a homer, all you guys want. But like I just said, I mean, I feel like in games or situations, scenarios in which there's two different teams, one is more desperate than the other, and there isn't such a huge gap in talent, usually the more desperate team ends up coming on top. In my Seahawks and Vikings preview that I dropped a couple weeks ago before Seattle ended up ultimately losing to the Vikings, I mentioned in that video, I would not be surprised if Seattle drops this game to the Minnesota Vikings. They're more desperate. They're playing at home for the first time all season, and they're due for a victory. And I truly believe that Seattle's backs against the wall, they play better when their backs are against the wall. They play better when there's adversity being thrown at them, just because they have the sort of dogs with the sort of mentalities that is needed, that is necessary to trump and triumph over adversity and to get back to the playoffs. And Seattle has to realize that if they end up losing this game, like I just said, the playoffs could be out of the realm, could be out of, might not even be a possibility no more. And so all those things being said, I think it's going to be relatively high scoring. I think we can see, high to mid-20s, but ultimately I think Seattle comes out on top. This team is simply too talented to drop the 1-3. So Seattle 29, San Fran 26.
When I was at NorCam with CG and Sam, the Seattle, guy, when they asked me my prediction, and I told them the truth. I worry about our secondary. When you have a rookie, doesn't matter if he's number one, number two, and Emmanuel Mosley, doesn't matter if he's number one, number two. Those are the two starters. Jimmy Ward has been inconsistent this year. He's been missing a lot of tackles. He's been getting burned. Jaquiski Tartt, I don't think it's the same. He's been dealing with turf toe. He came back, in the final preseason game. He limped off the field, so I was a little bit concerned. So there's a lot of concerns with that on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, I worry about Jimmy Garoppolo if the run game isn't working. He's going to scare me and he's going to make me upset, just like he did in the last game. But one thing that I do worry is that if Fred Warner and Azeez Al-Shaair, if they play really well, they can help out that secondary for any type of short stuff that can prevent anything going deep. As I mentioned, Azeez Al-Shaair is a good sideline to sideline. He knows how to move back and forth, side to side. He's quick. Fred Warner, he's an extension of the defensive line, but he's also good in that short coverage in the intermediate pass game. So if he and Azeez are playing really well, if Nick Bosa is doing his job, and our interior offensive line finds a way to start Chris Carson, that's good for us. And if our run game is chewing up yards, that's going to help out. But what happened last week against the Packers, this is the same situation. The Packers had issues. So I'm gonna go different. I love the 49ers. They're my favorite team. I still believe they're the best team in the NFL. But until they prove me wrong, and they prove me in this game, I don't think both teams are going to do a shootout like some people are saying. I'm going to stick with my final score, but has changed. 27-23 to Seattle, because I think their offense is going to play way better. And the last time I saw Jimmy Garoppolo, he had 2 turnovers, and that worries me. And even though he had a good game-leading drive, we did not get the victory. So I have to be honest about myself. Hopefully the 49er fans, understand that, because, like I said, I'm very, very cynical sometimes. I'm very realistic sometimes, and I'm sometimes a little bit hard on my team. But that's my prediction, and I hope I'm wrong. But as the fan, this is the fan score. I got 49ers 31. I got Seattle 20 as a fan, but my real prediction is 27-23 Seattle.
Love it.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. All right. I want to read this. David says, your defense is last in the league. Your pass rush can't get there. Your DBs can't cover. Your roster is no better than the 49ers. I wanted to read that. Well, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with David? Do you think he's a little bit too harsh?
He's right. Stats show that they're last in the league, but I wasn't talking about who has a better defense. I just said who has a better roster. There's more star power, on the Seahawks roster. Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson, Bobby Wagner, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, a first-time Pro Bowler last year. I'm talking about as far as star power, star talent, Seattle has an edge. And stats are only through a couple of games in the season. I mean, it's not like you guys' secondary is any better. Who's covering for you guys in the secondary? If anything, both the Seattle and San Fran secondary is actually in the same category. Both can't cover. So yeah. I don't know. I don't understand what he's trying to get at. But I didn't say that Seattle has a huge talent gap. I just said as far as star power goes, Seattle has the edge.
All right. So we got Hodge. I can't pronounce your first name, so I'm really sorry. If you think I'm wrong, that's your opinion. So hopefully, hopefully the faithful are more, more faithful than me. But I'm a little bit worried. But thanks very much, man. Like, if you disagree with my opinion, that's always good. I respect everyone's opinion. If you have more faith than me, shout out to you. And then we have some score predictions. We have Luke Luna. Says, I've been saying 27-23 49ers. Corey Davis says 49ers 28, Seahawks 24. And then Hodge says, that sure is. And then Luke says, we're going to start quick, and I think we can surpass the Hawks in scheming up a game plan. Your coach seems to be struggling with the game plan. Shout out to Luke Luna and everybody else. Anyway, well, I think this is a good stopping point for us. Thank you very much for those in the chat giving us your final score, giving us your opinions. Tomorrow, it's real now. Tomorrow, I'm in the West Coast time. I'm not sure if you're in the West Coast area, but it's a 1:00 start for us. No more these morning games because I don't like those morning games. But I'm happy a 1:00 game tomorrow. We'll see what happens. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Steezy. But before we go, one last time, let everybody know who you are one more time, where they can find you, if you have any social media, where they can follow you. Of course, talk about your YouTube channel. So before we go, I want everyone to know who you are one last time.
Yes, sir. Again, Calvin Domingo is the name. Steezy Smith is the game. I'm based in Seattle, so yeah, I am on the West Coast. And I don't just cover the Seahawks. On my channel, I also cover a lot of basketball. I cover some boxing. We want to cover some baseball. And in the future, we want to cover some soccer as well. So expect a lot of that content. Don't forget to subscribe to my boy right here at 49ers Ultimate Report on YouTube. On Instagram, be sure to, give him a follow. And then for me, once you go do that for my boy right here, find me on YouTube, find me on Instagram, find me on Twitter, find me on TikTok, all the same handles, but primarily on YouTube at Steezy Smith, SteezyASmith. I'm an aspiring major excuse me, no, I said that wrong. I'm aspiring to major, excuse me, in sports journalism / sports broadcasting. So I'm still a rookie at all of this, but I appreciate everybody that's kind of joined me along the way, along for the journey. It really means a lot. And, shout out to you one more time, John J. Thank you so much for having me on your show, bro. I'm gonna start live streaming on my channel. I don't ever really live stream, but once I really start putting things into motion, hopefully in time for the next matchup between Seattle and San Fran, maybe I could show up on your show, you can show up on mine, vice versa. Don't really matter, bro. But I know we'll work together again soon, and may the best team win.
All right. So with that said, everybody, thanks for hopping on this wonderful show, this great series we had. Now we had Steezy, a returning, to the channel. Check out his and my interview earlier in the year in my playlist. You can check out all my great, not just with Steezy, but I had some great expert guests, great YouTube communities, and great NFL community as well. If this is your first time here, but with that said, everybody, we said everything we can. The game's tomorrow. This guy right here is John J. I'm the 49ers Ultimate Report. This guy over here, this guy is Steezy Smith on his YouTube channel and all his social media. Follow him not just for his Seahawks, but all his other great content he also has. With that said, everybody, you guys have a great rest of your afternoon. And go Niners.
Go hard.